I'm Rogers Anderson, Williamson County's mayor, and today we're going to have a conversation with our emergency management director, Mac Purdy. Mac, thanks for being with us.
It's great to be here this morning.
The reason you're here, that we're having this conversation, is I believe there are some very important events occurring over the next few days and weeks.
Yes, typically in February every year, the National Weather Service sets a week, and the states and local governments participate in Severe Weather Awareness Week, and that's coming up here this next week. And it's really a time for us, before we get into spring and our typical thunderstorm weather, to take a minute and focus and look at severe weather awareness and make sure that we're ready for the spring.
We take a lot of the things for granted that occur here in Williamson County, and I want to start off by saying thank you for your hard work, and to all the men and women that work in the Emergency Management Department and all the volunteers. We just couldn't do it without the volunteers.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we think in our mind over the last couple of years, we've battled major flooding. We've certainly had tornadoes and rough winds, and it's just imperative that people take heed of the different warnings that come out about severe weather impacting their lives and their homes and their property every single day that we have an event. But clearly, I think, drawing attention to it, and I know that there's some additional information you're wanting to share about your cell phone that you might want to share with people.
Definitely. There's a new program that FEMA, as part of the emergency alerting system that we're probably familiar with, the kind of screen that interrupts TV programming or the beep on the radio, as part of that project and program, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, with the National Weather Service, has gone in with our cell phone providers. And basically, they're automatically sending us emergency warning messages for things like flood and flash flood warnings, for tornado warnings, and for Amber Alert child abduction emergencies. Typically, those severe level imminent threat emergencies, they'll send them out. I got the first one to my cell phone, I think earlier in January, when we had a flood warning go out, and I typically get paged and emailed and called in the middle of the night, and I'm fairly used to it. But my wife's phone beside her side of the bed, and my phone went off, and honestly, it took me just a second to figure out what was going on. It's not, it looks like a text message. It's not, it doesn't cost you anything. You actually can go into your phone and turn that alerting off. Obviously, I don't encourage anyone to do that, but that is an option in most of your phones. I do know that some of the different cell phone providers are doing it a little differently. Some are doing it for the whole county. So if a warning goes out for the north side of Williamson County and you're in Spring Hill, you may get woken up and go look at the TV and notice that the storm is all the way up in Brentwood, or vice versa. But other cell phone providers have taken that technology a little further and are actually the little polygons, the actual storm cells that the Weather Service draws, they're actually just alerting those towers. So I think it's a great added layer of warning for us, and that's really the way we want to think about it, is multiple ways of being warned and paying attention.
Well, on a typical warning that may come out, I know that we can put the crawl across even Channel 3 and our major stations that come out of Nashville, 2, 4, 5, or whatever they happen to be on your cable box these days. But there's still a lot to be said for everyone having a weather radio also, Mac.
Absolutely. I think that's the core of our kind of warning and awareness as individuals and families. I had a gentleman call our office just the other day, new resident to Williamson County, and just asking about weather patterns and weather warnings and how he should get those warnings and those types of activities. The weather radio, making sure you change the battery in it. I like to do it twice a year, but at least once a year. When you look at your fire alarms, if you change the batteries in your smoke detectors, that's a great time to do that. If you haven't done it, that's another reason for Severe Weather Awareness Week, is to make sure your weather radio's on and working. You can program a lot of them now. Those codes to program them and instructions are on the Weather Service website. I actually like to look at Hickman and Murray County, so I kind of know it's coming. Obviously, if you live on the east side of the county, that's not quite as important. But the weather radio, I think, is the key to, especially those nighttime storms when we're not plugged in and paying attention to media and news and computer and those things.
People may not really realize, we hear the term emergency management, but you being a director, actually we stole you. I like to tell the general that from FEMA a few years ago, and you're doing an outstanding job of getting our county prepared, organized. But there's a lot of hours you put in, and I'm sure your wife and children know that more than I do. But I know you put in a lot of hours in keeping our county safe, or at least being aware of the different events that occur or can occur on actually a minute by minute, hour by hour presence. But take a typical tornado warning that may or may be forecasted for our area. How does that all start, and what really happens in a lot of these scenarios?
Certainly. I think for us, for our perspective, one of the things that happens throughout the winter months and then into the spring is the Weather Service office in Nashville begins conference calls, weekly conference calls. And those don't happen in the summer, hotter, drier months, but especially when we get into winter weather and the spring storms, every Monday morning, the Weather Service and all the emergency managers from Middle Tennessee have a conference call and get a weather brief of what are they forecasting for the week. When they forecast hazardous weather, if it's later in the week, sometimes we'll have another call. That's one of the things that we do, is we're just kind of tuned into and paying attention to the weather systems that are coming through, and what is our chance for significant severe weather. Typically we get put under a watch. It doesn't always happen, but typically there's some type of severe thunderstorm or tornado watch that comes about. One of the things that we do is, as we move into that area, we kind of go into what we call a monitoring status. We talk about our Emergency Operations Center, which is the room that is really yours to work to respond and recover the community from emergencies and disasters. And what we do is then basically from wherever we are begin to really pay attention to those weather systems, the Weather Service, and the media as it moves across the state. You can kind of watch patterns. My background with the state helps me in that, because you kind of watch when it comes into Memphis and crosses the Mississippi River, or if it comes out of Mississippi and Alabama, sometimes they come from the south, and that way crosses the Tennessee River, moves from West Tennessee or North Alabama into Middle Tennessee. And so we actually have some warning and can kind of put a timeline around when do we think this event's going to happen. The ones that are harder to deal with are obviously the ones that happen at night. It's when people are asleep, people aren't up and paying attention necessarily. And so one of the things we make sure is that we're up and watching, and that we kind of rotate who is on call specifically. But in a typical weather event, even if we're at home, we're usually tuned into both our radios and something called NWS Chat. National Weather Service has kind of a chat room where we're talking with, kind of by email or text, the meteorologists at the Weather Service, and typically the news anchors are getting information from that same place. So we're hearing about damages and watching those things. One of the things we watch for most is a damage-producing storm. As it moves into, whether it was in West Tennessee or moves into Middle Tennessee, is this storm a storm that's producing damage? And that isn't a 100% indicator, but that's something that gets our attention.
When you talk about having, we've got over 800 square miles of Williamson County, and with the addition of the additional leg of 840 opening up from I-65 over to I-40, it's an enormous area in which you have to watch out for. And you really are the eyes and ears of our community in those early days to help prepare us. And of course, we have a responsibility as citizens to have a safe area to go to if it's a tornado in our homes. Usually the closet, an inward closet up underneath the stairwell is usually an ideal place, or a bathroom. More and more people are actually having construction done either in their garage or fixing a particular room in new construction that they can move their family in. We have an awful lot of two-story homes in Williamson County that always presents challenges. It certainly allows our families to have a little bit more elbow room and living space, but it produces some interesting scenarios. But if you're aware of them, we've got safe havens, safe places you can go to. But how, Mac, and I know the answer to this, but how do you coordinate all that with the 6 different cities that we have? I mean, most of our cities have law enforcement personnel. Most of our personnel that are in these cities or in our sheriff's department, they're out on the street. How do we communicate all of this information so that we're basically on the same page? Granted, something that may come into Fairview may or may not make its way over to Brentwood or College Grove, but you still have to be prepared.
It's a great question. The key to that and what makes our job easy in that sense is really the paid and volunteer professionals that are out in the field. Without them, we really aren't able to paint that picture. So as information comes in, people call 911 or they call about their power lines down. Whatever that event or incident is, whether it's local law enforcement, whether it's public works or highway department or volunteer fire professionals, those individuals that go out and put eyes on damage or power lines down or trees down help us begin to paint the picture of what's going on and the type of damage or event or activity that's going on. Obviously, life safety is the first priority for the system as a whole. Additionally to that, we're looking at things like roadways, infrastructure, power. Can emergency vehicles get through to potential injuries or areas of the county? There may not be a life-threatening emergency, but if there are trees down on the road and fire and EMS and our other emergency responders can't make it through, if you called 911, whether it was for the storm or something else, one of the things you have to do is get that road open, get an emergency route open so emergency vehicles can go through, and give time for roads and highways and TDOT to come through and really clear the debris. So there are lots of pieces. The key is our dispatch centers, those call takers and dispatchers, telecommunicators that do such a great job for us at our dispatch centers. Really, they're paying attention to what's going on in our community all the time, minute by minute, day by day, all hours of the day. And so we pay a lot of attention to what they're telling us, and then our emergency responders communicate into them. From there, we begin to paint the picture. And that's our primary role at that point as the responders are out doing their great work and the communicators and dispatchers are making sure that the calls are getting answered and responses being generated. Then there's that bigger picture level of what's going on in the community as a whole, and are we missing anything? Are we paying attention to it?
Well, then there's so many things that fall into your bushel basket of responsibilities. Around Williamson County, we know springtime we're going to get severe weather. It may or may not evolve into a tornado, but we're going to get some severe weather. High winds, lots of rain normally, creeks coming out of the water flowing out of the creek banks. The Harpeth River is always a challenge across our county because of the way it winds and travels all throughout, up and down, east and west, and north and south. There's a lot of training, a lot of experience you have prepared yourself, but it's a constant evolution. I mean, you can just watch the local TV channels that come out of Nashville, and they invest large sums of money to try to pinpoint where this bad weather is going to be in the next 2 minutes, much less 15 minutes.
Right.
And there's probably never enough equipment and technology, because Mother Nature still has a mind of her own when it comes to wind and storms and predictability. We do the best we can, but we do encourage everyone to prepare themselves. If they are not sure what that should involve, maybe we could touch on it. Do you have water? Do you have food? Are you prepared? And certainly this time of year, this show's being taped in February, it's a little chilly out there at nighttime, and
Absolutely.
Electricity still goes off. I think Middle Tennessee Electric's done a wonderful job of keeping and routing and looping electricity where they can bring it in from different positions and angles. But at the end of the day, you still have to have some heat and blankets.
Definitely. I think our individual readiness as individuals, as families, as small neighborhoods and communities, I think is key to the whole response of any emergency or disaster. 180 something thousand people in Williamson County, and if we were all impacted by something, it's going to take all of us to see through that emergency or event. And we've had recent experiences with that, where neighbors help neighbors and you help each other out. The first piece is the warning piece we've talked about. Your weather radio, your smoke detectors, paying attention when you know that storms are coming through, paying attention if you're out in our community for the outdoor warning system, the siren system that you may hear as it's tested monthly on Saturdays, that's designed for our parks and our schools and the people that are outside. Sometimes you can hear it in your homes based on the way the wind's blowing, but we don't rely on that. But paying attention to those storm clouds and things, that warning is the first piece. After that, it's your supplies. It's then paying attention. Having the warning and waking up is one thing, but if I don't move my family to our safe spot under our stairs in our downstairs bathroom, I'm not really doing anything. The weather radio went off. If I just turn it off, then I haven't gotten my family safe. So it's warning and then action is one of the things we talk about. And after that, it's what if my power's out for a day or two? What if the ice storm warning we had earlier in January, 1 degree of temperature difference, and as great as Middle Tennessee Electric and our electrical partners are and the road guys, you're probably stuck at home for a day or two. At least that's probably the wise thing. So do I have enough food to see me through? And most of us in our pantries and refrigerators have enough where we can get by for a day or two. But how do I do that without power? Do I have any water if my pipes freeze and those kinds of things? And so there are lots of guidelines and things to look at there. You'll probably see, if you look online, 72 hours of food and water, and that can seem overwhelming. And I just encourage people to do something, to take that first step of if I'm stuck at home, what do I need to have? And then second to that would be if I have to leave my home, especially if you live in a potential flooding area near the Harpeth or an area that floods, or where you could be isolated in. If you have to leave in a moment's notice, what are you going to take with you? Do you have anything in your car or vehicle? Those types of issues. One of the things I realized a couple of years ago in looking at my own family and home preparedness, which sometimes when you do this for a living, you don't do as good a job at home.
I believe they call that the cobbler's. The cobbler used to make shoes for people. His children were always they were barefoot.
They were barefooted. I'm familiar with that, unfortunately. And I think for all of us, whatever we do, pay attention to it. I realized that, if my home were damaged or destroyed in a tornado, for example, or a flood or something, do I know all the passwords to get in to do all of banking and paying my utility bills? If I had to go back and prove all of that, how long would that take me? How stressful would that be in the midst of me losing everything for me to go find my insurance documents and those kind of things? And so whether that's a safe deposit box, whether that's a family or a friend where you can take some of those documents and secure them, there are lots of ways to do it electronically, but they're just layers of that planning and things that, have I thought through that?
Well, when we think about almost 2 years ago in the flood, actually it's been a little bit more than 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think we discovered at that particular time, we handled it, we got through it, but even as an agency, there were many things we hadn't prepared for that 500-year flood or that 1,000-year flood, depending on what documents you read. Mm-hmm. We discovered that on certain parts of the county, because of the way the flooding occurred here, we were literally locked out. Mm-hmm. Couldn't get in, you couldn't get out, because of the Harper River had just flooded to the stage you couldn't move around. We spent a lot of time and energy since then, and money to fix some of those issues that we did. I think it's important for people to realize that in today's world, doing an assessment before something is important, but sitting down and discussing what we do, what we did right, what we probably could have some room for improvement on, those kind of discussions just help us to get better prepared. The medical profession has been doing medical evaluations for years and years, sharing the ideas of a surgery, sharing the ideas of that particular patient's health care, and they have what we call protocols. And I know you have certain protocols that the FEMA and all the other agencies that you go through, checklist. Have we done this? Have we done that? Lots of training is being occurred by not only your department, which would be natural, and the support group that goes with it, but we're now pushing that training out into so many of our other agencies here in county government, because you can't do it all by yourself. We've got to have different people to come in and help you, but they need to be prepared too.
One of the things that we've begun this year as kind of an updated program, it's been ongoing as we support our volunteer fire departments, the 6 volunteer fire departments that support the areas outside our cities in Williamson County, is an ongoing fire training rookie school. It's about a 3.5 month. It's every Tuesday night, every first Saturday. There's always training going on for those volunteers, and those fire chiefs and fire departments that are in your local communities are always looking for volunteers, and that's another key way that somebody can get involved in their community and help out. But that training is key, whether it is for that volunteer firefighter or those who volunteer with the Red Cross or a church group or somewhere else. That's kind of that next step of that readiness.
And there are probably people watching this show. What's the best way that they might contact you to learn more about this, or a church group that might want to have you or one of the men or women come out and talk to them about being prepared for that whole church, that whole congregation, that whole community?
Definitely. I think that you can obviously always call our office. Also, you can look on the county website and the emergency management website, and our emails are there. I think there's also a link to get information about volunteering, but that would be the best way. And then look at, we'll try and steer people in the direction that their background and their skill set and their interest really matches.
Mac, we got about 3 or 4 minutes left in our show, and I'm sure there's something that you would like to touch on that I've just overlooked, something that I failed to bring out. And I know that on any given day you can almost use help and when there's a bad situation, but learning how to do that at that time is not what we're looking for. Right. The heart's there, the intent is there, but we need people prepared.
Definitely. I think you actually touched on it earlier, but I want to make sure I follow up. One of the programs that we started last year, and there's a press release out on it now this week as we kind of orient people to it, is storm shelters. And those people who have put storm shelters in their homes, one of the things that with Franklin and Brentwood we have partnered to do is a storm shelter database or registry. So if I have a storm shelter in my garage or in my home or out behind my house, that you register that. Where that becomes really helpful is if an area is devastated by a tornado, those emergency responders, those fire and rescue crews know where to look and in debris and in a home and those kind of things. And it's something that we noticed and learned from other communities after storms, that if I have a whole community that's devastated, it really can save time. And if I have a structure that's collapsed, in terms of going into that structure and looking and identifying, yes, they had a storm shelter, it was in the garage, start looking there. That doesn't mean those rescuers aren't going to look everywhere and account for those individuals, but that just takes an inordinate amount of time and resources. So anything we can do to help that. So if you have a storm shelter on our website, on the county's website,
log it in.
You can log it in.
Recently, there was a severe tornado that went through, I believe it was Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and I saw some of the devastation to the television of what that storm did in just a matter of minutes. And I also understand that as large of that tornado was, in terms of I think it was a mile across, and some 200 plus homes damaged, there wasn't a single life lost. Now, there's probably some luck in that. There's probably some questions that you just scratch your head and say, how can you have that much damage and not have a single life lost? But the fact of it is, from my understanding, it came up not in 2 seconds, but there was plenty of warning. There was the weather channels, the emergency management people, they got prepared and got that information out there. Probably saved a lot of lives.
Absolutely. That key to getting the warning out, paying attention to the warning, and then heeding the warning, doing something about it, tuning into that local media and paying attention, and then taking action when it's necessary and appropriate is really key.
Mac Purdy's been with us today. He's the director of our emergency management department here in Williamson County. He oversees a lot of the operations. If you're interested in making contact with Mac, I would encourage you to go to our website, call him on the phone number. Do you know what it is right off the top of your head?
790-5752.
And get involved in our community. We have so many different ways. We didn't have the opportunity to talk about our shortwave, the old ham operators we call, which is a whole different division, but it is critical to the operation. Again, run by our volunteers, headed up, good training, ages anywhere from 10 to 12 years of age, right on up to my age. Thank you, Mac, for the job you do. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you around the county. I'm Rogers Anderson, Williamson County's mayor.
Hi, I'm Vince Gill. Did you know that car accidents are the #1 cause of death in young people ages 16 to 20? As alarming as that is, there's something we can do about it. If you just take a simple pledge, it'll help keep your families and your friends safer while you're out on the road. I pledge to wear my seatbelt every time I ride in a vehicle and make sure that others in my vehicle are protected as well. Well, that's it. Come on and join the thousands that have already taken this pledge. Don't be a statistic, be the clique.